Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, pie or cobbler?
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Welcome to We Got This with Mark and Hal, the show that settles the debates that nobody else will touch.
Sometimes the debates that nobody else is having.
Sometimes.
Except us.
You know, sometimes people listen and they're like, this is not a debate I've ever had before, but I have very strong feeling. The number of times, how many times have you seen in your limited social media interaction, someone who's like, I didn't realize I felt that strongly. I started, there's nothing, the worst compliment you get as a podcast is like, I wasn't really excited going in. A lot of that, but then I found I had strong
none
opinions.
taken. Yeah. Well, that was
Yeah.
the number of times I have said that to you.
Uh-huh.
Like we've talked about this, I think, on other shows where we've been on, and the idea of like, I don't know if people really argue about this. And then I go into the internet and people are sharpening toothbrushes to shiv one another over whether chili should have beans or not.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
It is jarring. Or my favorite example is Ted Leo, who said to us not 1 hour before recording, I don't know if I have enough to fill a whole hour talking about cereal. Cut to him standing on a chair, emphatically going, but you have to consider the crunch factor.
We all have an arguer deep inside of us. Some of us,
do.
it's right on the surface.
And for
That's work
EJ
for you.
Salazar, it's coming up right now, an argument that EJ wants to have, that we are going to have, pie versus cobbler. Did you know that Brits call testicles cobblers?
No.
I read that. I have a text message out to a British friend of mine to find out if that's true.
You want to confirm.
So if he texts me back in the course of this episode, I will confirm or not.
Is it callous?
No, it's not James Callis. It is Paul Freeman, who is Welsh, but close enough that he would know what cobblers were.
Sure.
But we're talking about the American version of cobblers.
Yes.
Yeah.
The pie. Another dish grown out of, not ingenuity, but, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And you have these people these colonizers who come over from England, and they're
so none of
used
this was really out of necessity.
Well, no, they had the food that they liked, right? The food they were used to, these pies.
I meant
and
colonization.
Colonization, not necessary at all. Absolutely. So they show up in America and they can't make a lot of the pies and dishes that they're used to. So they just make food out of whatever they have available.
Yeah.
And out of that grows like pie and cobblers, like sort of interchangeable over history. This is something you sent me, so you know way more than I do because I skimmed. I skimmed.
Sure. Well, you're right though. The basic idea being, look, I'm a pioneer. I'm traveling across.
Pioneer. I get it.
I'm a caballero. Is that what they are? They're either pioneers or caballeros.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's right.
It was the necessity of, look, I don't have all of the fancy stuff that I would have back home in England or wherever in Europe I've come from. What I do have is a Dutch oven and an open flame.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beauty of the cobbler is the ease of the cobbler.
Right.
I think we should determine first what makes the difference between a pie and a cobbler.
My experience is that a pie is, even with like lattice work, it's generally fully enclosed. Your fruit filling is fully enclosed. So the crust goes all the way around the bottom, but all the way around the sides as well.
Yeah.
And then there's either a lattice work top or just a straight top with some vents cut in it or a meringue top, as opposed to a cobbler where maybe you have a dough base and a crumble or something on top, but there's fruit in there, or maybe no base at all.
The primary difference is the nothing on the bottom. There is no but yeah, what you're saying about, completely sealed in the dough is a pie. Right. Or, there's also open topped pies, a pecan pie, pumpkin pie frequently is just the pumpkin and the thing. But it's
the shell underneath.
The shell. There's a shell that is holding everything together. as a cobbler where it's the vessel itself is what's holding the thing together.
So what we're saying is a pie can have a top, but a cobbler cannot have a
bottom.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm with you.
Now, do we want to include in this some of the offshoots of a pie or a cobbler? I'm thinking specifically if we get away from the South and head up to the Northeast, we've got crumbles or crisps, which is instead of a biscuit dough crust on the top. Cobbler traditionally is fruit, stewed or canned or frequently not fresh fruit, topped with biscuit dough and then baked either in an oven or over a fire. Do we want to include something like a crisp in there where it's more of a streusel top instead of a biscuit dough top, but it's the same idea of stewed fruit with some sort of carb on top, for lack of a better way of putting it?
I'm okay with it because I think it's variations on a cobbler. They all adhere to the rule that it's bottomless. There's no, like the Coppertone baby, the bottom is gone.
Like that party they had in that one Harold and Kumar movie. Bottomless.
Yeah.
Or like the hippopotamus's rhymes. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that from,
no.
Oh, what was the Kiwi guys?
Oh, Flight of the Conchords.
Yes, Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, okay.
I'm the hippopotamus. My rhymes are bottomless.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm with you.
All right.
Now you've jogged my memory. I did not take your reference. I apologize. What a bad comedy person I am.
I know. Look, what a bad setup person I am.
No,
you know what? We should just quit, Hal. Let's be done with comedy. You know what we should go into is drama. You want to do a production of Two Angry Men?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
All right. Guilty or not guilty on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Not
guilty. Well, that was a short play. Let's go back to comedy.
Great. We took our hiatus from doing comedy.
Hold on. We both just tried to read one another so that we would say the opposite.
And we said the exact same thing.
I thought for sure that you were going to say guilty. I was like, oh, he looks like he's forming a G. Because I thought you saw
You're
me.
You're just looking at my mouth on the Zoom is what's happening?
Yeah. That's all I'm looking at all the time. Thinking about.
I do have the camera just straight up zoomed in. So all you see of the Zoom. Could you imagine that if you're doing a Zoom meeting? How close to your face do you think you could get the camera in a Zoom meeting without someone making a comment about it? Do you think you could go eyeball to chin?
I think you could go eyebrow to chin. Like eyebrow to chin. Especially if it looks like you're being engaged, if you're like leaning in on something. I think that would be like, well, if we're talking about Q4 and then really digging into it, I think then you could get away with it, but you can't.
Oh, if you're playing the game version. Yeah. If you're playing the game version where somebody has dared you to do it, all you have to do is a split second of it. And that could be, hang on, let me get my wallet out of my pants. Oh, I'm leaning forward.
Oh, then I could get really close to it. I could go
single nostril.
I could go eyeball nose at least.
Go eyeball nose. Yeah.
Eyeball nose at least. Yeah. And I bet you I could do more than that. Yeah.
Well, I challenge you in the next Thrilling Adventure Hour Zoom show. I want eyeball nose at some point.
Okay.
Awesome.
You think we're going to do another one at some point?
I think we will. I think that, I've written down, and indulge me if you will.
Okay.
I've written down a few questions that I think answering these questions might steer us in a direction of pie versus cobbler. We've talked a little about cobbler. We've talked a lot about pie in the past on this show because I think this is maybe our third pie based episode. We had cake or pie. We had what's the best kind of pie.
Yeah.
So we've talked about pie extensively, but this is our first mention of cobbler. But I think there are a few questions that if we answer them might start to bring into sharper focus the answer. Should I just start asking them or do we have anything else we want to set up first? Like,
I feel like I'm coming into this with a bias, so I want to answer questions to see if I can get out of it to give everything a fair shake.
Well, now that begs a brand new first question.
Sure.
Where do you get your bias?
From eating pie all the time and like the dough being so integral to it that when I see it with a topping on it, I'm like, this isn't pie.
Well, it's not.
Why isn't this pie?
Definitely not. Why isn't this pie? Is different.
Yeah, like when I go to an upscale restaurant and it's like a crisp, I'm like, can you just not make pie? Is that what this is? It's a lot easier to buy a bunch of small cast iron skillets, fill them with peaches and whatever other seasonal stuff you have, and then throw oats and brown sugar on top. Now, Jennifer will make she'll do that just if we have frozen fruit. She'll make like she'll throw stuff in a ramekin. We'll have it. And that's good because it's like, we don't have time. We don't have the time nor desire to spend the time it would take to make dough or go get dough and make a pie. So it is good.
You're getting all the flavors of a pie. You're getting the cinnamon. You're getting the crunch. You're getting the you get apples or whatever the fruit is that you're using.
Yes. You get the texture. You get the heat. You get the sweetness. But I think to me, often it's like, oh, this isn't a pie. Now with a biscuit top, that is different. Like a peach cobbler. I'd rather have peach cobbler than peach pie.
Yeah.
It just, that feels like it lends itself best to cobbler because of the way it works. You get like the gumminess at the part of the biscuit that's top, and then the top is a crispier biscuit. But like, I don't want that with apple or cherry as much. I'll have it. I won't complain.
Yeah.
But I will think in my mind, like, oh, it'd be nice if this was pie.
Interesting. It's funny that you mentioned Jen. I thought that your bias was going to come from Jen. I thought it was going to be, cobbler all the way because of something that Jen, I know she's a very good cook. And I also know she is from the South.
This is true.
You know what I mean? I was surprised when her lasagna was one of my favorite lasagnas. I wouldn't be surprised if her peach cobbler was one of my favorite peach cobblers because she's from
Florida. She's from the Florida area.
Yeah.
Florida, Georgia
adjacent version.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that band. Yeah.
Yes.
Growing up in Tennessee, we grew up on a lot of cobblers, but also we didn't have the same sort of diner culture that the Northeast has.
Yeah.
And diner culture does seem to thrive on pies. You know what I mean?
Right. You have it.
Meal, and then you've got that big pie case in the front. There's not a cobbler case because cobbler is not pretty generally.
And it's probably meant less to, not that you can't store it and reheat it, but the pies at a diner are cold. They're sitting in a cold case rotating.
Pull out the stack in the morning and put them in the display case.
100%. So there's something to that. Like a cobbler always, to me, has seemed it's a much more fresh food, even though it can be stored. Like I always think of it as like, I made it for today. It's here now. It's a very of the moment food.
It does feel like that. I wonder if that's because of the biscuit on the top. You know what I mean?
Maybe so.
Because that is like, and we'll get to that. That's one of the questions I have actually. Cobbler doesn't seem like something that I have eaten one that was pre-made and reheated. It seems like a thing that, cause it's easy to make. It's so easy. You can just whip it up, like that. All right. Let me jump into some of these questions.
Go ahead.
Question number 1. Yay or nay on the requirement of a bottom crust?
Are you going to answer this as well?
I'm going to ask. Yeah, this is for both of us.
Okay.
You're going to ask. I think you can't put it on a plate if it doesn't have a bottom crust. A cobbler requires a bowl. I think. You know.
Yeah. It's a cobbler's a mess.
A cobbler's a mess. A delightful, delightful mess.
Although when is the last time outside of being at Dave Berman's house when he makes that great pie that holds together, like he is the greatest, one of the greatest cooks I've ever met in my life.
David Berman is all timer.
When he makes a pie, he takes a cutout and it's like a television commercial. It doesn't.
Well, that's because when he makes a pie, it takes him 3 days of meticulous perfection to get it just right.
Worth it. He's like, you come over his house. He's like, I made a great pie and I have peanut butter ice cream. And you try it. You're going to try it. Just try it. Just try it.
Just try it.
Yeah.
Now there was the year that instead of doing because he grew grapes. That was the thing. Grapes. He grew Concord grapes, which taste like the jam. And he would make pies every year out of it. One year, instead of doing the peanut butter ice cream, he did peanut butter sauce and vanilla ice cream. And I asked him why vanilla ice cream and peanut butter sauce. And his response was, well, you need the glass of milk to go with your peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I was like, no. Right?
So with the exception of a Dave Berman pie, when you cut into a pie, it is a mess. You can go in with the best intentions. I made a perfect cut. I'll give you an example. I was in San Simeon recently. Jennifer and I were celebrating our anniversary.
Which is Spanish for Saint Simeon.
We were in Saint Simeon.
Yeah.
And we stopped at Cambria, which is Spanish for Cambria, for the font.
Yeah.
And when you're in Cambria, to me, the most famous part of Cambria is Lynn's pies. So Lynn's they have an orchard. They created the Olalla berry, which is like a cross of a blueberry, blackberry, and raspberry, I think, are the three fruits. But they make fresh pies. So they have their orchard like a couple miles away, and then their restaurant. We got a couple slices of pie. I still have mine. I haven't had it yet. This slice of pie is a mess. It's a mess in the container. Immediately, as soon as you like cut a piece of pie, the rest of the filling is like freedom, and they just rush. And you're lifting it, and then they're trying to like jump overboard, like the Titanic is sinking, and they can save themselves. Like it's not as neat. It doesn't hold as well. Yes, sometimes you get a piece that will hold together. I tend to think those don't have enough fruit in them, but
yeah,
they're all a mess. But with a pie, you at least have a fighting chance it's going to stick together. You do have a fighting chance.
You do have a fighting chance, but if the assumption of a pie is that it is going to hold together and then it falls apart, does that diminish the experience? Whereas with a cobbler, from the get-go, this thing is going to be a mess. That is why I have chosen a spoon as my utensil of choice, and I've chosen a bowl as my vessel of choice. A cobbler is never going to pretend to not be messy. It's not like a cobbler is like a slice of pie where it's like, no, put this wedge on a plate. I promise things will be fine. A cobbler's like, you better put me in a bowl because I'm going everywhere.
I'm ready to blow. Don't you get that, put that plate away, put me in a bowl. I'll tell you what, when I have pie, I put it in a bowl.
Oh yeah?
Always.
Sure.
Because I want to put ice cream on it, and I want the pie to be warm, and I want the ice cream to melt. And it's going to naturally create, like, I don't want to have to use a spoon. First of all, I'm not using a fork. Who are we kidding? The fork stuff can get in between it. The spoon, you can clean it off with your mouth.
You can't clean off a fork with your mouth?
I mean, it's not as good. A spoon is better. A spoon is better. Trust me. Yeah.
How?
Go ahead.
When you try to fully clean the food off a fork with your mouth, do you stab yourself? Is that what the problem is?
It's happened. A lot. Okay. And I'm scared of the pointy.
Do we need to get you a safety fork? Like
I need a safety fork. Yeah.
Like the equivalent of those kindergarten scissors, just rounded, a fork where the tines are rounded on the ends.
Can I get one where the tines have little spoons on the end? Is that possible?
What do you call a half spork that's mostly spoon, half spork that's mostly fork?
I don't know. What do you call it? Is this a joke?
I don't know. No, it's not a joke. It's a question.
Oh,
people of the world, give us an answer. I know.
I'll tell you what. I want you to take a break. Give us your answers. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue Mark's BuzzFeed quiz about pies or cobblers to determine which one we are.
That's right. You know what? Just look at this video and a pie and cobbler will go really fast over your head. Yeah. And then it will stop on one of them. And then you will nod and go, huh. And then you have a TikTok video.
Whichever word you're thinking about is the one that you're going to hear. We'll be right back. You're listening to We Got This with Mark and Hal.
You probably already have a favorite animal. Maybe it's a powerful apex predator like the tiger or a cute and cuddly panda. And those are great, but have you considered something a little more unconventional?
Could I perhaps interest you in the Greenland shark, which can live for nearly 400 years? Or maybe the jewel wasp, who performs brain surgery on cockroaches to control their minds?
On Just the Zoo of Us, we review animals by giving them ratings out of 10 in the categories of effectiveness, ingenuity, and aesthetics. Listen with friends and family of all ages to find your new favorite animal with Just the Zoo of Us on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get podcasts.
Hello, I'm a stuffy dowager countess.
Travis?
I'm judging everybody's manners.
Oh, no.
Manners isn't judgy. It's about teaching you to be your best self and be a little more confident when you enter social situations that you don't understand, and maybe also teach you a little bit about history you didn't know, or give you interesting things to talk about at parties.
Yeah, like The Secret Life of Emily Post.
Or like why wristwatches are the way that they are.
We can talk about table manners from the Victorian era.
Sure, or what it's like to attend a Regency ball.
Yeah.
You can find all that and more if you listen to Schmanners on Maximum Fun or wherever your podcasts come from, I guess.
Manners, schmanners. Get it?
I like you're listening to like we're sports radio.
You know what? I'm getting that from, I was listening to a lot of Bullseye recently. And the way he does it, I'm like, oh, we should just remind people what they're listening to. Not that this is going to air on TV, but it just feels more professional.
Who turns this on midway through?
I don't know. Who turns it on at all?
Good point. Are we back?
To this? Yes.
Oh, good. We're back. Hi, everybody. I hope your break was nice. I hope you heard about some of the great shows on the Maximum Fun Network. But now we are back. So what is our answer on bottom crust? Required or not required?
I say required because I also like it because it's extra. It's like the softer crust, and I like that.
Can I tell you, I'm more a crust guy than a filling guy on pie, generally. I like the ratio to be just right, but I like a pie crust, you know?
It's hard to find a well-made pie crust. I'll tell you what I do. This is my tip. I mean, outside of... No. Well, you can buy the pre-made, whatever it is. You know, you put it on top. You should always brush it with milk and put a little bit of sugar on it. But what I've done a couple times, which I like, is make it sort of a French, like an apple pie or whatever, is I'll make a royal icing and put that on top of the top crust.
Oh, that's smart. So it gives it like a shellac that seals everything in.
It's a shellac. It seals everything in. It tastes great because it's an extra sugary bite. So if you have like a more tart fruit, like a cherry, then you have something that balances it out. And you can just have water with it. You don't have to have like it. It almost provides the extra bit that either ice cream or milk would.
Yeah.
Or Dutch apple. Dutch apple, I think, is when it has that on it. Dutch or French. Can't remember. Doesn't matter. Don't tell me.
Dutch or apples that both people pay for.
You split it.
You bring up my next question on this list, which is dough. And this, I think Cobbler has the upper hand on. Dough, pastry dough versus biscuit dough. They are two very different things. And as a child of the South, I am so much more inclined to enjoy biscuit dough than I am pastry dough. Pastry dough to me has a little bit more grit to it. It gets a little more, it's a little more toothsome in a way that isn't always necessarily positive. I love a pie. I'm a big pie fan. I like a flaky pie, but there is something about biscuit dough that just feels like home. And that's the topping on a cobbler is biscuit dough.
Yeah, I think most pie crusts are kind of flavorless and they're maybe like a little bit salty. Like there's something about it that just isn't great. Like that's why if you get the dough right, you're like 3/4 of the way there with a pie.
Yeah.
But biscuits they're buttery. These tend not to be flaky. They're not flaky biscuits. They're like those clumpy buttery southern
drop biscuit style. Yeah.
Yes. It's drop biscuit style. So it gives you really good texture. It gives you a really good butter. It's got like a strong flavor all on its own. So it's almost like you've taken a drop biscuit, cut it open and put fruit inside. Except then you forgot the bottom. The bottom dropped out as you were about to have it. So it's like you took that and did it upside down, right?
And in fact, there is a version of a cobbler that I saw that was kind of cool, specifically an apple pandowdy, where it is made with the crust on the bottom and cooked like that and then flipped over. So the crust winds up on top. Now, I would argue that eliminates the dry, crunchy bits of the topping that are so wonderful.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then it becomes
That's
like
what it's all about.
Yeah, I like those crispy bits on the top. I'm a biscuit dough fan.
Drop biscuit
generally
in particular.
Speaking. Drop biscuits. I have almond milk in the fridge and Bisquick, and it is the quickest breakfast in the world. Literally just mix those two, throw them in the oven. You have biscuits.
Right.
A little bit of butter if you want to buttery them up at all. And also pastry dough is a lot more difficult to make. You know, you're required to have the cold butter and you fold, there's all the folding and all that.
It's not that bad. It's not as simple, but it's not
as simple.
It's not as scary as it seems is what I would say.
Yeah.
I think it seems more daunting, but you can do it. And also like there's nothing wrong with the frozen pie crust I've gotten has been fine.
Yeah.
And I'll get it where it's rolled. So I'll put it in the pie. It's not like a shell.
Yeah. I do the rolled up pie dough. I've done that in the past.
Yeah.
You know, this sort of leads me actually to another question that I have. Well, you know what? Before I get to that question, I'll ask you this one. This one Pie has in droves. And this is really just a chance to make fun of Cobbler being ugly. Is the aesthetic question. I have seen some beautiful, beautiful pies. I've had a million delicious cobblers. I've never had a pretty cobbler.
Oh yeah, no, pies.
Cobbler is down and dirty and like, let's just give me this big mound of sweet deliciousness.
Oh yeah, no, you can get into like making vines. You can do designs in the dough.
Oh yeah.
You have a lot of different options. There is an art to pie making, whereas cobbler is more of like a down and dirty kind of meal, I would say, or dish. Like it's simple.
It was a meal actually until 1890. It was either a breakfast or like a lunch dish.
Yeah.
It didn't become a dessert until the end of the 19th century, which makes sense as a breakfast because it is calorie packed. And if you are, you know, working your butt off or pioneering your way across a country, that's a heck of a lot of calories right at the start of the day to get you through it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's much simpler. Dump in the fruit, put the drop biscuit topping on, go bake it. As opposed to I'm going to lay down the bottom crust. I'm going to put in the filling. Then I'm either going to do a lattice work or I'm going to do a special design. Like the designs people do, it blows my mind what people are able to create with stamping and putting extra dough on top, like sculpting. Aesthetically, the pie wins hand down.
When people will do a lattice work where it looks like leaves, I'm like, what, what Tolkien elven village crafted this beautiful pie? This thing looks like it needs to be on an altar.
I am Bakomir, son of Cobbler.
Oh, ridiculous.
Do you remember Greg Abbott? Remember that Greg Abbott bit he would do? Our friend Greg Abbott, who is hilarious.
One of the funniest people I've ever met. Yeah.
He did these one-man show. Like he was always like, just had this bizarre sense of humor that made everybody laugh. Like you couldn't do anything with him without laughing. So he did a one-person show. He's a huge Lord of the Rings fan. And he just goes through like, I am Isildur, son of Boromir, son of Gorbor. It like goes through the whole thing.
And he'll do it for 10 minutes and you'll laugh and then you'll get annoyed and then you'll laugh again. It's very Tom Green in that way.
We both did his show, right? I know I was a guest on it a couple times. And
Hal, did you hold on, hit pause on the Greg Abbott. Yes, sir, we do. From my Welsh friend. Cobblers.
What? Oh, so we've got confirmation.
We have confirmation that Brits call testicles cobblers. Okay, anyway.
Well, should we end the episode now?
A cobbler it is.
I need my cobblers.
You were saying about Greg Abbott being
it was impossible. Anytime I shared the stage with him, I like immediately would laugh and then he would laugh just because it's so, whatever it was so ridiculous.
Yeah. Which made him a delight to improvise with.
Oh my God. And just the sweetest person, just so kind as well. But like, oh my God, what a genius.
Yeah. Anyway, we love you, Greg Abbott.
We do.
Here is, I think, the biggest question to ask for cobbler versus pie. I think that one of them, aside from aesthetics, which is a big part of it, which we've already covered, pie wins that hands down. I think the jury's out on biscuit dough versus pastry dough. I'm a biscuit dough guy. You seem like I think so too. Guy. Are you a biscuit dough?
No, I like a biscuit dough better, but I also like the bottom.
The bottom
I like
crust
the dough on the bottom. Yeah. So far, that doesn't supersede my love of biscuit dough.
Now, here, though, is I think that we can – I'm going to try. I will see if we can pit – it might be apples and oranges. The best attribute of a cobbler against the best attribute of a pie. So here's my question. Which is more valuable? The ease of creating a cobbler or the variety available in pies? Because a cobbler looks like a cobbler regardless. It's simple. Right. It's fruit in a Dutch oven with a biscuit topping, done. A pie can be a hand pie, a lattice pie, a savory pie, a sweet pie. I feel like that is for pie. I think that is its biggest thing it has going for it, is that a pie can mean a little apple treat in a box from McDonald's, and it can mean a pizza. You know what I mean? There are a million different kinds of pies.
I wouldn't say pie. Like I wouldn't drag pizza into this.
That's fair. I wouldn't, that's, you know what? That's a good point. In the same way that I wouldn't drag sweetie pie as a term of endearment into this.
Yes. As opposed to
one might argue that
kicked me in
calling
the
your testicles cobbler.
Yeah. Now there is a difference, I think, in like they both have apple, peach, blueberry, cherry. I think where it differentiates is like your cream pies. You tend not to have that in a cobbler. Lemon meringue. When you get into like meringues and key limes, those generally are not that people haven't cobbled them, but they are not regularly cobbled. So you could probably rattle off more varieties of pie.
You can go into a spot and say, which of these 40 pies would you like to try? Or which of these 2 cobblers would you like to try?
Yes.
But I feel like as this show does, we try to look objectively at the subject. I think objectively as a product, pie is superior. Because there are so many different varieties. It's got a lot going for it. But the ease of creating a cobbler is so much a part of its DNA that anyone can make a cobbler at any point. Does that trump the value of the variety of pies that are out there? There's something to be said for variety, but I think there's also something to be said for the universality of the ease of making a cobbler.
Well, there is something to this. A cobbler is generally something you have to make. If you go to the frozen,
as opposed to,
if you go to the, I guess what I'm saying, and maybe I'm wrong. This is my experience.
Is this your Yankee bias?
No, I can go to the store right now, and so could you. You go to your local grocer and go to the frozen dessert section. You would find a ton of different pies there that you can take home and reheat. You would additionally have the option, if you wanted to go home, to take a lot more step. You can actually do it a few different ways, right? You can go get a can of fruit filling and you can get some frozen pie crusts and make the pie that way, or you could do it from scratch. Yeah. A cobbler, by and large, you have to just make it home. The only way you're going to have it is if you put together drop biscuit dough and then have whatever fruit you're going to have and throw it in there.
Isn't that part of the fun?
No, it can be. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, like,
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm just trying to get I'm trying to get all the arguments laid out there.
I think what I'm saying is in terms of the ease, in the ease of, if you're going to make it, then I would give a slight edge. If you have to make the dough from scratch, and really if you have Bisquick, what's the difference between Bisquick, which you mix in with some milk, and buying a frozen pie crust? Really? You know what I mean? Like, they're both kind of simple. Like, one you have to thaw, the other you have to dump 2 things in a bowl and mix it. It's not
right.
Neither one is too difficult or really too different from one another outside of, I have the fresh biscuit.
Well, I would argue that making a cobbler is there are easy ways to make a pie. I would argue that traditionally and by default, a cobbler is the easier dish to make.
I just think to me, it's the variety of pies that exist in the world, plus the ease of getting one anytime you want is much easier.
That's a good point. Like, it's really easy. It's much easier to make a cobbler than it is to make a pie.
Yeah.
But it sure is easy to get a pie.
Yeah. You don't always feel like baking your dessert and putting it together from scratch. It's not as easy.
I was just going to brag on something I did yesterday that I was pretty proud of that turned out great.
I would love to hear you.
I went to the farmer's market. It was a Sunday. Went to the farmer's market, got the biggest zucchini I've ever seen. It was the size of like a spaghetti squash, but it was a zucchini.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, what am I going to do with this? Figured it out, made 6 little boats, scooped all the guts out, and then did stuffed zucchini with sausage and, breadcrumbs and Parmesan and all that. But what I did with the middles, I was very proud of this. I took the middles, scooped them out, pureed it, mixed it with all the ingredients for like a cake bread. I made zucchini bread.
Oh, nice.
The middles from this zucchini. And then what made me think of it was you talking about the fruit. I made a plum balsamic compote, basil balsamic compote that I put on top. Everything except the balsamic came from the farmer's market yesterday. And the whole thing cost less than like $7. And I was very, very excited about it. Anyway,
that's amazing.
I just want to throw that out there. You know, use every part, waste nothing in creating that dish. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There's your quick recipe, people of the world. And, yeah.
Does pie win?
Anyway. Yeah, I think pie wins.
People of the world. There's nothing like a good cobbler.
By the way, hold on a second. Before you do this.
Yes.
I don't want to sound sad. Because I sounded dejected that pie won when I went, yeah, pie wins. I realize I said that as if, of course, pie was always going to win. But I love pie. I'm excited about pie. And I think that final question that we wanted to answer of, does the variety of pies trump the ease of a cobbler? And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Yeah. People of the world, cobblers are great. There's nothing like settling onto the porch with a mint julep, with the June bugs dancing in the tall grass and having yourself a bowl of cobbler. I love a peach cobbler. Like peach is the perfect
with a Philly accent.
Peach cobbler. You know why it's perfect? I found a Delco guy on TikTok who just has the most horrendous accent. I'll send it to you. I almost sent it to Paul because he and I were texting about the Phillies. And I was like, oh, I should send him this. And I was like, he knows what it sounds like.
He's been there.
There's nothing like peach. Peach in particular is great for a cobbler because of the unique, like super sweet peach taste plus the buttery biscuit topping. But pies are everywhere. You can get a pie pretty much wherever you want, wherever you are.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you're going to sit to make a dessert and you want to take the time to make a pie, they're fun to craft as well. Like there are a lot of different, you can have it made for you. Totally fine. You can make one with the ingredients already sort of put together and created for you. That is fine. Or you can do all of it from scratch. That is also fine. You have so many options and ways to go that makes the pie the superior treat to the cobbler. No offense to the cobbler, but this is asked and answered.
We did it, Hal. How many more pie topics do you think we can cover?
Oh, at least 30 more.
Also, are we going to go back to that deli that you like in your hometown that has all those pies in the display case?
Ben and Irv's?
The one that has the Yiddish dictionary hanging on the wall?
Ben and Irv's.
Yeah, that place.
Yeah, we can go back there.
Let's go back to Ben and Irv's. Let's go sit at Ben and Irv's right now. You know, hop in the car. Everybody, we're going to go. This topic is closed, but there are many more to discuss. We got to get up to Ben and Irv's. But in the meantime, while we are driving, please reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets, or
you can email us, wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/WeGotThisPodcast. Share your recipes for your favorite pie or cobbler. Share your cobbler or pie memories. Let's talk about food together. You know how much fun it is. Thank you to producer Ken Plume. You can support him over at patreon.com/Ken Plume. Thank you to researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, for giving Hal and I yet another chance to talk about pie and get really hungry.
Yeah.
In the process, we would love to sit down with all of you and have a giant plate of dessert. And, I don't know, maybe start a great big food fight. I think it would be fun. I think Cobbler would be easier in a food fight.
Like Hook.
Right? I loved Hook. Rufy. Oh! Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
Was it ever going to be Cobbler?
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.